Alright, here's my chain and sprocket. Goes along with the laminated sheet over the chain and sprocket that has the small parts list at the bottom of it there. Like I said before, hopefully by now as you go through your trays while you're working on these projects, you have the minimum of what you need. However, if you are short on some parts, please let me know so that I can help you get those out. That way things can stay organized. Talk a little bit about the chain and sprocket, and then I'm going to take it apart a little bit so we can look at the assembly a little bit better. The relationship of the input shaft right now to the output shaft is parallel. It's a lot like the simple gear train. Now what is a little bit different with the chain and sprocket is that the drive and driven gear move in the same direction. And in this setup, they can move in either direction. Now, since the drive gear is larger than the driven gear, the speed is increased. With the speed increased, the torque is decreased. Now, if I switch my hand crank over to the smaller gear, the gear on the right, I have to move this a little bit. Now the speed is decreased. I have to spin the input gear much faster than what the output gear is doing. In this instance, speed is decreased and torque is increased. These are variables that we've talked about. Now let's look at this project a little more closely. When you're working with these chains, they actually snap apart. Now you need to be careful because these little tabs here, those can snap off rather easily. And please, when you're working with this, show great care. We'd like these materials to last a long time. Now if you're adding links, the pins line up with the holes, and they will actually snap in place. So as I'm adding some links in there, I kind of put it in at an angle, and I snap it in place. Now, these are for your project. This is not for your wardrobe. Please do not wear these. Now, I want you to notice where I placed my collars. When I was assembling the drive shafts, I made sure to put the collars on the very outside of the drive shaft before I inserted it into my assembly. Now, I've set up my bearings. I've set up some on the inside of my girder. So on the side with my sprockets, I have the bearings set on the inside of my girder, but then where my hand crank's at, I have those bearings set on the outside of the girder. And it's just kind of personal preference. I get more use. I can use a shorter drive shaft and not need as many spacers if I move some of these bearings to the inside. So that's how I have those set up like that. Now, when you set up the chain and sprocket, you really need to just set up 2 of these sprockets on your girder, and the distance is not real important because what you're going to do is you're going to come back and adjust the chain. So the distance is not real important. You can use different size sprockets. This larger sprocket, I had to place it up a little bit higher on the girder, otherwise it would bottom out. And I did leave my hand crank kind of loose so that I can put it on either the small sprocket or on the big sprocket. I think this project is more interesting if you use 2 different size sprockets and not the same one. So if you're looking through your drawer and you have 2 different size or you have the same size sprocket, let's change that. Now with the chain, once you place that on there, you're going to need to adjust the length. Here it looks like it functions, but there's really too much slack in there. So what I like to do is I like to unhook the chain carefully without breaking off those tabs that I showed you, and I stretch it out to see what's going to fit. Now if the chain is too tight, it's going to bind up in your assembly. So you don't want it too tight, but you also don't want it too loose. So you have to find a happy medium there. I'm going to try taking out a couple links. That's where I think I finished up at. And actually, if I took, let's say I took out 3 links, and let's see if the chain will reach together. Well, there you can see that the chain does not reach together. So instead of taking out 3 links, I'm only going to take out 2. So now I need to go in here and add a link. Again, I kind of put them in at an angle, and they pop in place. But these are very breakable, so show great care with these, please. All right, so we got that set up in there. And it's functioning, again, the way we intended to. So this is the chain and sprocket. Both sprockets go in the same direction, so if one's going clockwise, the other one's going to go in clockwise. And you can reverse them. You can reverse the flow of power and the direction of power. So flow of power would be if I came and grabbed the input shaft or the output shaft and made the input shaft move. So flow of power and flow of direction is reversible. Once you're all finished with this, please make sure you have the laminated sheet back in the drawer. Make sure you disassemble the pieces. And I do want to remind you on these plastic bearings, I'm going to start looking for those on projects because people are skipping the bearings. And I want to make sure that we're making good practice of assembling those in there. So I will mark down a little bit if you're not using the plastic bearings. So please make sure you're using those. Until next time, good luck.